It is now 7:01. Are we ready with the television? Good. Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting. As always, we read out the agenda. Sometimes we take items out of order depending on schedule and how efficient we're being or inefficient. We will never take something before its scheduled time if there's something that needs to be discussed in the, the public are going to be interested. At 7 p.m. we have community input. 7:05 Chief Flannery update about the fuel tank project. 7:20 Carlisle Energy Task Force municipal solar project discussion. 7:40 Town Administrator's report. 7:50 the Board of Selectmen discussion about the Carlisle Affordable Housing Trust and the Carlisle Housing Authority. 8 p.m. the Selectmen liaison reports. At 8:05 approval of minutes. 8:10 executive session around some litigation that we have, and at 8:30 adjourn. And at 8:10 when we go into executive session, it will be not to return to public session, and at 8:30 we plan to adjourn. So first is community input. Debbie.
Hello, my name is Debbie Bentley from Hildred. I'm also the instigator of the Carlisle Poppy Project, which is commemorating the centenary of the end of World War I. It's been incredibly successful. We have had, I kind of lost count at 3,300, so I can't really give you an exact number until we've recounted them all. But it's been phenomenally successful, and the support from absolutely everyone in the town hall, the library, the police has been absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, so I just came to show you the final designs. I did email them out before, but I brought an extra set of copies for anyone like the mosquito who might be interested. The idea is that the installation will start on the 2nd with a red cape being attached to Lady Liberty, which will flow down into the Rotary, and then over Saturday, the Saturday we will plant the Rotary and the Triangle, and the Sunday and Monday the Common will be planted. Do you want to sit here?
Yes. Thanks. The Poppy project for
the centenary of World War I. Sorry, Nathan, I didn't realize you were on the phone.
Maybe we should turn.
And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm having a bad connection or what. I still didn't catch what it was.
Okay. Maybe Tim will tell.
So the website's been updated with the installation and how everybody is welcome to come and plant poppies. We're asking for student volunteers to come and help them. And I met with Chief Fisher yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and he's approved it all, and I'm going to liaise with him with anything that happens. He has actually agreed that the road can be painted with poppy templates to help the visual connection between the Rotary and the Common, and so I've got to liaise with him about that.
Washable paint?
Chalk paint.
Chalk paint, good.
So we're actually painting the town red?
We are painting the town red, but please don't say that because it happens to equate to election, so I don't want to be political.
Well,
Poppies, is that something that's not going to bleed all over Lady Liberty if it rains?
No, it's all. I will double check. I will go and take the tweel and wet it and see if it comes off. But no, it's nylon tweel. I usually
that would be fiber dyed. In other words, the dye is in the fiber before it is, well, it's still liquid, and so it doesn't have anything to bleed out. It's not like it's a piece of cotton that you add the dye to and you hope that the cotton absorbs it all and then doesn't bleed it out.
So it's all nylon tweel and it's transparent, so the robe is split so the air can pass through it, so hopefully it doesn't fly away, and it's going to have tent pegs holding it down. And I haven't quite got world-famous engineers to come in and have a look at it, but we could try if you needed it.
That would be good. Well, thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. I think this has been, personally, I think it's a great community binder effort to show spirit, and it's a
And
good
reverence.
project.
So
Look
everyone
forward
come
the-
along and
to the
get
execution of it.
involved and enjoy and appreciate and remember.
And also mention your website, because there's the Roll of Honor on it, and
Yes, it's http carlislepoppyproject.weebly.com, and we also have a Facebook page, which is the Carlisle MA Poppy page.
Is there a link from the town website?
I don't know.
Maybe we ought to try to get one on.
yeah, is that possible? Okay,
Yeah, I'll send Jen all the information.
great,
Thank you.
great,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. Is there anybody else here for?
Hi, I've got two very short things and one slightly longer. My name is Jeannie Janetsko, and I'm at 898 Maple Street in Carlisle. And the first thing, which is very short, which won't affect anybody, is there was a small mistake in the 9:25 minutes. So what I've done is I've made a copy of those, and I'm just going to give it to Jen. It was basically the information, the paper information that I've given out wasn't entered, that it was given out. I don't know if you want a copy of it. Tim, do you want a copy?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing was, is it okay if I move these things off the podium and put them on the table? Because they're,
Sure. No,
Okay.
that's-
okay, the second thing was that the new signs are up, and I just wanted to, I'm not going to talk about that because I want to talk about the third thing. And I'm just going to mention, I have handouts for this. There you go, Tim. And let's see. I want to make sure everybody gets a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops, I'll send mine over to,
Okay.
okay.
And I just wanted to point out, this is about the signs, and I want to say that there have been replacement signs replacement signs have been put up which point out that Carlisle citizens have been correct all along that said that the hunting signage was poor, but the new signs don't go far enough. And I list the reasons why they don't go far enough for safety and liability. And as I said, I'm not going to go into it long. People can read it. However, it goes with respect to the advisory from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They say, stay on designated trails and wear bright clothing like blaze orange. And Carlisle says, bow hunting will not interfere with normal trail use. And I ask, what does interfere with normal trail use even mean? And it says nothing about the colors. But the most interesting thing, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says, don't forget to protect your dog too. And protection means that something bad can happen to you. So if that follows immediately after wearing bright orange, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is saying bad things can happen, and protect your dog as well as yourself. So that is why the signs don't go far enough. I have two things here that I'll hand out simultaneously. I wrote a email to Mr. Goddard and to Jen, requesting that the Board of Selectmen put on their agenda today a vote to be exercised the same evening to abort the deer hunt effective immediately. And I put down the reasons for that. Then they're very sound, but I won't go into great detail If you've read the mosquito read my letter to the mosquito, you'll have seen the essence of it. The big difference here is I state the laws and regulations that allow the Board of Selectmen to board the hunt. And I will go into the most important thing to me right now. Safety has always been my most important issue. I don't like the deer hunt. I don't think it should go on. But my concern was safety first before I approach anything else. But after the mosquito editorial that basically said that the decision to do the deer hunt should be done by town meeting vote, and it didn't happen, I started getting really, really concerned. So I have a short, short 4 paragraphs that I'm going to read to you. I know I feel sorry for the trees, but you know sometimes to get important thoughts across, it has to go on paper. Carrie, would you pass these?
Sure.
Through?
Yeah.
This is a letter that I've written to Tim Goddard, the Board of Selectmen, and usually Jen has been really good about handling it. I want you to go to page 2, in which you'll see an email from Jennifer Gibbons to me, and she wrote on 10/5, "Please note that the Board of Selectmen will meet again on October 23rd, and your request has been included on that agenda so that the board can hear your concerns and ideas." I went eureka when I heard that. And then on October 29th, there's another red line that goes, gratefully accepted on the spot meeting response from Selectman Reed. Selectman Reed does not know why I am not on the October 9th agenda based on previously expressed deer hunt concerns, and reassures that I will be on the October 23rd BOS agenda. So this is the second time I'm hearing I'm going to be on the agenda. She asked Selectman Kissinger about the Deer Committee's attending the October 23rd meeting. Selectman Kissinger nods. I think I'm quoting it the best I can. If I'm not, I'm not perfect, but I've tried to say it as honestly as I could. Now I'll go back to the first paragraphs. Dear Mr. Goddard and Board of Selectmen, I am concerned and alarmed that I have not been able to get my concerns of the deer hunt on the Board of Selectmen agenda, despite all my honest and sincere efforts. I was told by Executive Secretary Jennifer Gibbons and by Selectman Kate Reed that the deer hunt concerns would be on tonight's agenda. They are not. I ask why and who made the decision. Respectfully, what do I need to do to get my deer hunt concerns on the next BOS agenda? Will you give me a response to this question this evening, as I have been pursuing this goal with you since September 25th? Or at least tell me when you are going to give me a response to the question. I hope that the system that protects Carlisle citizens' rights to speak of their concerns and be heard and responded to is not broken. There is a mystery of why I have not been able to get on the BOS agenda. And is it related to the mystery of why a decision on the deer hunt did not go to town meeting vote as expected? A timeline of my expressed concerns and BOS town administrator response as follows. If you have any questions or need copies of materials, please do not hesitate to contact me. Jeannie Janetsko, 898 Maple Street, Carlisle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still have time.
Sure.
Ed Hum, East Street, we need address 776. We've been concerned about the deer hunt, and we've been checking 2 of the areas, being Town Forest, which we live next to, and also the Greeno land. We've observed that there's a car that parks on Greeno land. It did not have any indication that it's authorized to be there for hunting, and it's there. First time we noticed it had the license plate was 10 months out of date, And the second time we went, we decided, we saw the same car there another day, and it was a Saturday, and we went to the police and reported it to the police. They had the name, the license plate number, and it happened to be a veteran's number. And they tried to look it up in the license plate number up, and they said they couldn't find it. Well, I went back and looked. I looked at my own address, but it had and they gave us a lot of trouble as far as, well, maybe they just forgot, they maybe had the sticker and so forth and so on. But the fact that it's a veteran's plate, they needed to put VT in front of the number. And I looked at the inspection sticker, and it actually puts the license number on there and had the VT on that, and it was a current inspection sticker, but it was an out-of-date on the license plate, which means whenever we take our car in, you have to have the registration being up to date in order to get it inspected. So it probably had the tag, but just hadn't put it on. Okay. Last Saturday, that same car was there. The time on the first one was about 11:15, and the police sent a car, and they checked and said, "Oh, there's a bicycle in the trunk. There's no problem." And we got a lot of flack about, well, people forget to put the sticker on, and all these excuses for the owner, so nothing was done. That same Saturday, we went back at 3:30, and that same car was parked there. This past Saturday, that car was there again in the morning and was there later. And yet...
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you. What's the point of your...
The point is,
story?
I believe 95% that that's a hunter. That's not, it doesn't have the proper authorization from Carlisle to be hunting in Greeno land. Now, the Sunday after last, we happened to be cleaning up our garden at Foss Farm. And there was a bow hunter that stepped out of Foss Farm, out of the federal land, into Foss Farm. And I was thinking at the time, well, maybe on federal land, you're allowed to hunt on Sunday. However, I looked up the law, and they're not, and I looked at what's in the federal land, and it says no Sunday hunting. No one
Not
is...
under our jurisdiction, you understand that, right?
No one is policing illegal hunting in Carlisle. And you have a deer hunt that they say the hunters are these people that are going to only not shoot away from the trails and everything else, but there's other hunters in there that are not necessarily going by the rules. I think that's a big danger and a large liability potentially for Carlisle.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other citizen input, sir?
Good evening. My name is George Vendura, Maple Street. I'd like to suggest something about all this stuff about deer hunting and signs and things like that, safety. Okay, I think we have been, there's been many meetings going on, and this is still an issue. Somebody talked about the agenda, somebody talked about a illegal deer hunter. I think we're dabbling here in trees. We're missing the forest. I don't think the issue is any more deer hunting. It used to be. Or signs, or safety, even safety, which is always capital. The wording on the sign, whether it should be orange and color and danger. Okay. That's the trees. The forest is what the editorial said in the mosquito. This is a democracy, and the people aren't being heard at a town meeting. I would suggest that we have to defer to a higher authority. When the deer hunting committee need guidance, I don't know exactly the whole chain of command, maybe they go to the CC. The CC work under you guys, higher authority. This is the Board of Selectmen. Now we're at not an impasse, but we're talking about democracy and exceeding authority. It's embarrassing. It's concerning. I don't care about the deer. I don't care about hunt safety, believe it or not. I don't care about hunting. I don't care about orange. I don't care about dogs. I don't care about children. We're talking about a big issue here. It's called democracy. And I think that the mosquitoes said it right. That's the new issue. And I think we should stop talking about the small issues and see the forest. I think it's very, very easy to get out of this, let's call it embarrassment. There's 20 or 30 people here. There's 5 people there. It's not us or them. When you have a problem like this and you're on the phone with somebody and you say, I can't figure it out and he can't figure it out, let me speak to your supervisor. The supervisor in this situation is the townspeople, and that was made clear by the mosquito article. It would be no embarrassment whatsoever for the Board of Selectmen. You will not lose face, nor will anybody here lose face, if we just say, this is an issue that's bigger than us. Let's defer to authority. And you're not the authority here because it's the town meeting that's the authority. It's the law, it's the warrant. So I know we can get our egos up here and say, well, you know, and all that stuff, and go home and say, we're going to get embarrassed, we have to handle this, we have to control this. You could do all that, but it's really not necessary. I don't think one person in this town who has now read the editorial and is a bit inflamed or a bit concerned or looking over everybody's shoulders, it's not win or lose between these people and you people. It's simply saying, this is beyond the scope of what we usually deal with. Let's go and do what the due diligence is. The natural thing is follow the warrant and put it in a town meeting. Nobody would fault the BOS for that, and nobody would fault any of these people for saying, I don't win, you don't win, these people don't win. It's neutral. Give it back to the town where it belongs, and let's decide the way it should have been in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Thank you. I just have one comment, public comment. I voted today. The town, this was the second day, actually, of early voting, and I saw Helen there. I'm just like to encourage everybody who has the chance to come into the townhouse or the library during the time that the library is going to be having the voting. Get your voting done. It's pleasant. It's easy. No lines. That's it. That's my spiel for today. Okay. So, Chief Flannery, can we have an update about the fuel tank project, please?
Yes, thank you. We had a meeting on September 12th of all of the interested parties on the town boards and committees, including Tim and Gary, Chief Fisher, Jim Darr from FinCom, John Mativier, Jerry Lerman, John Lavery from the municipal facilities, and our engineer, consulting engineer Russ Barton from Wilcox and Barton. And my task at that meeting was to summarize where we are with the project and also determine what the next steps were and how are we going to move forward with the project, because as you know, it's been going on for a while, and
Yes.
we have a deadline of January 1st, 2019 to remove the fuel tanks. So the next steps were to, we asked the engineer to develop a small set of specifications and a little drawing so we could solicit some quotes on the removal. And Tim was kind enough to take some names that people knew of reputable contractors and solicit quotes. And we received 2 quotes for the work, and that would be to remove the tanks, close the facility, remove the pump and equipment and lines, and also, fill the hole and pave. And those quotes came in of CYN Environmental of $27,578, which approximately $9,750 is the paving portion. Paving has gone, increased significantly. It's about $5 a square foot now. And the other contractor was Tank of Wakefield at $25,139. I did contact the engineer this week to solicit his thoughts on the quotes, which he thought were very good. And we also asked him about specifically, because it was discussed at the meeting we had on the 12th, that if paving came in high, would we not want to pave and do that later? And the engineer's recommendation is not to do that, that the paving, even if the binder was just put in, that's what we should be doing, is putting a surface back. There are many things to be worked out, switching our facility operation when the fire station facility closes down to the DPW to include, access to the pumps, dispensing system and the record keeping, and that type of thing, and the fuel supply, deliveries and so forth, which we've yet to work out. On the removal of the tanks, there are two major problems. One is that we have $10,000 that was appropriated by town meeting in the spring for this purpose of engineering and working on this project, which isn't sufficient funds. And the second is we would be doing the CONSCOM filing for the removal within the buffer zone there, and that would have to be done, immediately. So I bring to you tonight that information regarding the quotes and the desire to move forward, but looking for the source of funding that we don't have at this point.
Yeah, we don't have, because we thought it was going to be about half of that.
Right, and I've looked at, the fire department budget. There may be some funds, but certainly not enough to cover that. If I just took the building maintenance money that I have, maybe $5,000, and put it toward it, we would still be short about $10,000.
The amount of the paving.
Well, that's what they were thinking when we were talking
Yeah.
about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at the bids, there's significant discrepancies in the.
Well, in the lines, in the
Except for
lines
the
there
paving was
were.
that they must be using the same contractor, because that was exactly the same.
Yeah,
And
but
just so you get a sense, this is just a sketch that they did, so you can see,
I have to tell you that the Facilities Committee discussed this at great length. And, one of the worries was, did the engineer over-design or over-specify this, and that, resulting in such a heavy bid?
no, I reviewed it, and I don't think, it's pretty, the front end's boilerplate, and it's pretty straightforward. That was my sense of what the spec that I saw. It wasn't anything unusual that I saw.
I mean, things like backfill at $25 a cubic yard versus $152 a cubic yard.
Yeah, we discussed that too. We were wondering if one of them had labor in it and the other one didn't, because when you look at the difference between the UST closure services on both of them, one's $1,000 and the other one's $12,600, and the one that was $1,000 is the one that's charging $152 for the fill.
Right.
And unless they're doing
Actually, when-
diamond dust that you're using for fill.
This is exactly what happened when we did the cistern installation at the fire station. We had these varying cubic yard numbers that contractors use, but the bottom line numbers, two of them were very high, and three of them, I believe, were within $1,000 or two of each other. But their line item amounts varied differently, and I don't have access to what those should be. Although I know that, between $350 and $450 for paving is probably what you're going to be looking at now per square foot. I mean, that's pretty common today. I recently.
That's the one place they agree.
Yeah, right. They both agree that's $5 a square foot, right? Yeah, right.
Have you or Tim gotten any response to the letters you wrote?
I have not.
No response?
No. No. I wrote 3 letters to the. It was the chief finance officer at the state and 2 state representatives, representative and senator, and I have not heard back.
Oh.
So I think I'll send a second letter and
Yeah.
make a phone call.
Yeah.
I asked the executive director of the Mass Selectmen's Association for a read on it, and he hasn't got, that was just Saturday, so he hasn't gotten back to me yet. but
Okay.
He's gonna check.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. I don't know what to say. We were hoping to, see if there was any way of paring this down,
Right.
because that was just not put in the budget, and I don't know how we do handle that.
Yeah, I know that, member of the Facilities Committee's been working with Gary Davis on potentially having DPW assume some of the
Yeah, we have
The
talked
cost
about
for-
it, yeah.
pavement removal.
That would,
Yeah.
that would
Which
be,
which
Would
could-
Chapter 90 cover any of the pavement funds, do you think? Because there
Right.
seems to
Not a
be, we're
public
gonna get
road.
more
Oh,
than
roadway.
they originally,
roadway.
when they originally said, we will get more,
Yeah.
about 20% more.
So is the issue that, was this something that was budgeted in, by the facilities committee?
I don't believe this was on the facilities committee. I know that it was on the TBA review
Yeah.
on their list with a number, which I think was 40,000 if I remember. That was about
And then
40.
John Lavery called
And
and
said
said,
it
oh,
could be done for
10,000,
under 10,000.
under 10,000,
Right.
8,000 is what I recall, yeah.
Right.
And then we got the bids, and they're 25 and 27 respectively.
Right.
So,
So in the budget, we have 10,000 short of what it's gonna cost.
At least 10,000, yes.
yeah, 15, I would say 15.
15.
And so the question is whether or not this is something that has to be done by January, right?
Yeah, we can't go back out to bid. We can't not do it. We can't really take a whole lot of time
Right, needs
To-
to be.
to beat these guys into submission, and they may know that too, which is maybe also why the bid may be higher than we were expecting too. I don't know.
I guess I would suggest, and I'm sorry, the phone is cutting in and out, so I'm only hearing about half of what's being said.
Oh,
But I would suggest, we let finance committee know that we may be over. They would, try to manage it throughout the year so that we aren't, but we know that we may be over by 10,000 at the end of the year. But, we're going to have to be careful what extras we might buy throughout the year to make sure that we can try to get it into the 10,000. Get it into the current budget.
Right.
right. Tim, you have anything else?
Well, As you know, the way the municipal facilities article was voted gave that committee some flexibility to move funds between projects. So, in theory, you could
Yes, and
pay for this. It means probably something else on that list is not gonna get done,
Yeah.
or it's gonna have to get done at a lower cost.
And when we talk about our liaison reports, I will discuss some of that, because,
Okay.
for instance, well, I might as well go ahead and say it now, because it kind of affects your site, because we're talking about not putting the trailer in this year, as we thought that we had originally kind of budgeted for, because you're leaving, and because we don't know where the next person might want it or not want it, and so we might do a trailer at the DPW instead, so we are already doing that, but I do know that the financial arm of the town is also very concerned about us not overspending things and not playing too fast and loose with things, so I wouldn't want to scare anybody. So if we could manage this within the budgets, that would probably be preferable. If not, we would certainly have probably, or then we'll,
First find out whether DPW can
first find out whether this,
accomplish some piece of this to
whether,
reduce the
it might be
cost.
that this contractor wouldn't like that, look, it's my job, I want the job, or, take it or leave it kind of thing, so. Or at least maybe the DPW could do the binder.
Yeah, that would definitely, and
That-
most people that I've talked to feel that that's a reasonable accommodation for what we need to do there, to drive over and to plow it in the winter and so forth, that a binder would be acceptable for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be,
So-
I would think, half the cost of the
That's-
9,000, because it's only like an inch and a half, versus a 3-inch or
Yeah.
2.5.
So, okay. All right, anybody else have anything? Questions, discussion?
I'm just concerned about the huge discrepancies here, and
Oh,
whether you
I-
can go back and
We
say,
can-
Trust me.
what's in these numbers?
We don't know.
Try to find someone else to give it to and say, give us some more numbers, but.
And in
yeah.
fact, partly, the fact that we had it engineered and had the specs done was in order to avoid
Right.
that sort of
Discrepancies,
Yeah.
thing.
right.
But they had the same worksheet, and they filled it out totally differently. Well, they still both had the 28 cubic foot
Yeah.
yards of backfill.
Right.
It's just that one
Just
was
a
diamond dust
calculation.
and the other one's
Right.
using gravel,
Right, yeah.
So, or they put something else in it. I really would like to know, what is
What?
that 15228? What is that?
I'll call them.
In certain respects, yeah. That would be good, to get a little more information.
Right,
Appreciate that.
welcome. You're welcome.
7:20, and Energy Task Force Municipal Solar Project discussion. You're on, Bill. And Helen.
Let's get you the mic. You should be in the one.
Probably 4 is realistic. The, one more, yeah. Oh, wow.
Good evening.
Good evening. We have a decision? On the spot.
Do you have a do we have a decision
Yes.
about to,
But which of the bids you, the selectmen prefer?
Or.
we have not had that discussion.
Or
Or
no.
nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have not had that discussion, so we were waiting for you to, I think, to have that discussion, because,
We have some questions, I'm
yeah, I
sure.
think there are some questions. No, go ahead, you said you had a
Yeah,
question.
geez. Let me, I just am pouring through the, I hope I have enough.
Oh, good.
Just had a couple of questions. Now,
Maybe Alan Lyon.
Thank you.
Tim, I was just looking at the revenue estimates. First of all, I guess before I dive into the weeds, we got bids from 3 different vendors. We had an evaluation of the 3 different vendors on several dimensions. They were subjective kinds of evaluations, not necessarily objective evaluations. But we came and ranked the 3, 1, 2, and 3, and the second one, ranked second one, has been eliminated in favor of the one that was ranked third. And that really just, I mean, I'm scratching my head over that. But then in looking at the proposals that they made and looking at the revenue estimates for the proposals, just to remind everybody, we asked them to bid on what they refer to as carport installation, which is a 22-foot high canopy over a parking lot installation of panels. For the DPW, portions of the DPW, where the cars and trucks are, and the macadam is, and then portions of the Carlisle Public School parking lot, bus area, and those sorts of things. So that was thing one. The other part of this was ground level location of panels at places where there currently exist town or forested areas that are on town property or school property. And nominally, it's 1.5 acres of trees that would need to be taken down in order to accommodate putting in ground level.
Just can I clarify here? It's nominally 1.5 acres of a system, which will result in another, at least 1 acre of trees removed.
Trees, so yeah.
So 2.5 acres of trees then.
And so I'm looking at these estimates for revenues, and vendor one for carport at the transfer station. Vendor one estimates that we'll get $28,000 in income annually. Vendor two estimates we'll get $11,000 in income annually. Vendor three estimated we get $18,000 annually. However, they cited that liability issues may preclude any funding from third parties, that might scare them off because of all the activity that goes on at the transfer station. But no matter what, of those 3 estimates, there's almost a 3-to-1 range of income that we might receive. And that's at the transfer station. At the public school parking lot, the carport installation, vendor one, $29,000, vendor two, $30,000, vendor three, 18,000, almost a 2-to-1 kind of a ratio of differences in these estimations. And then for where we have to remove an acre and a half of trees or a couple of acres of trees, either at the space between the transfer station and Lowell Street, or in the case of the public schools, between the public school parking lot and the playing fields down below. Those would be the two areas of trees that would be removed. The estimates range from 43,000 to 24,000, and there's another nearly 2-to-1 ratio. But the thing that jumped out at me is that the vendor that was ranked number 2, but was eliminated from your recommendation, put a note in there that said, "We very much believe that small ground mounts requiring a clearing of trees are not an efficient use of solar. Abutter concerns will still be significant, while site prep costs and permitting efforts will greatly lessen the economic benefits of such a system since they are being amortized across very few panels." So here we have a company whose one of the principals of whom is a Carlisle resident, whose bid was rejected even though they were ranked number 2 out of 3, not even proposing to cut down any trees because they don't think that's an appropriate activity for putting in solar. And I just think in terms of the process going forward, we're going to need to tighten up the specificity on the one hand of the plans before the applications can be made, most likely.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. 'Cause these are all concepts.
These are all concepts. And that, given the timing of this, we're probably into level 4, not level 3, in terms of the revenue generation. I mean, just in block 4 instead of block 3. So, and these are block 4 revenue numbers, by the way. So I'd really like to know, did we eliminate the company that didn't want to cut down trees because we want to cut down trees to put in more solar?
No. Unfortunately,
We haven't eliminated them. We just,
Well, you're recommending that they not be considered any further, right?
no.
That there are only 2 that be considered?
Because what we recommended is that we would start negotiating with vendor 1, and then if it was successful or was not successful, depending on the layout of the solar panels, or what the town would accept for cutting, because these are all these numbers are all, kind of vaporware, if you will, for the computer guys. It depends on the negotiations, what the town will accept for how much trees will be cut on the ground-based systems, and what the town will accept for the canopies. We have no idea where we're gonna go with that, but that's why we decided and recommended to you guys that we would start our negotiations with vendor 1. Depending on what happens with that, we would fall back to vendor 2, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, or vendor 3. The problem that you stated with vendor 2 is that he did not meet the requirements that were set up when we put the bid out. They do not have a track record. The company does not have a track record. The personnel in the company have a track record of installing solar, but the company doesn't.
Well, the company was rated highly, as were the personnel in your ranking. That's what,
I'm confused because I think what you're calling number 2 is, did we give A, B, and C, the letters A, B, and C originally?
Yeah, you may have.
And I think what you're calling number 2 is actually C. It's the one.
It could be.
Yeah. So, and they,
A, B, and C.
oh, okay, so it is, so it was A, B, and C, okay.
so
Okay.
I think,
I'm
well, the
sorry.
other clarification is, so our memo, so there was the original proposals, and we went back with clarifications on both sites. We sent out the same information to all involved. And so they came back with some changes, some of the vendors. So the numbers, And we also adjusted the numbers to try to use the same block, because they used different blocks, and they had also used different interconnection costs to adjust. So we try to get to the same
Apples and apples.
apples and apples to adjust it. So I have numbers of the 28 for carport at the, block 4 at the schools of the 2877, 1780, 50, and then we had used 25, 490, just so.
I'm taking these from the, what's here, what you've handed in this time for the
Right.
purposes of this
We don't
meeting.
have that
Right,
anymore.
well, that's why I'm trying to,
Yeah.
is it page 5? Is that what you used?
No, it's,
Page 5? No, in terms of your numbers.
Oh, I see, yours is colored, uh-huh.
I mean, that's,
You're looking-
yeah.
and they should be the same, but they're,
I just want to make sure I'm looking.
What page are you looking at?
Page 5 of
Page
the
5.
working
So
group
he's looking-
report.
Block 4, financial summary. And you were looking at block 4,
And maybe I'm,
and
is it the same?
I'm talking 1, 2.
Is it all the same, or no?
But I'm confused also because you seem to be showing 3 bids for a canopy at the transfer station, and I believe we received only
Yeah,
2
they-
bids
yeah.
for,
We-
Sunburn,
For a canopy.
Right.
school carport, school carport.
well, I read,
They only did the canopy at the school.
yeah, I read a copy of did they send another one in, that talked about option 1 and option 2? That's a copy of the proposal from them that I have.
but.
Those
but
options were all at the school.
At the school.
They had a base and an option 1 and option 2, all at the school.
They say one of these 3 was the best of their 3 options, that's the
Can't
one
hear
we
'em.
considered.
Well, they had one at the transfer station. There was a schematic in their proposal of the transfer station and a schematic of the Spalding parking area.
The Spalding parking lot, yes.
Yes.
The transfer station, I don't believe so.
Okay, Nathan, what page are you looking at? On page 2? On page 2, first, second, and first column, second column, third column, on the ranking sheet. Is that how you were ranked?
That's right, and it looks like what you're recommending is first column, first choice, third column, second choice, and second column is
Third
third choice.
choice.
And what I heard was that one of the reasons why the second column was rated poorly was because of the age of the company. But if I look at the note right below there, it seems like our second choice one is also a brand new company. Is that a typo?
Well, I think also, this ranking was not, this is not including the financial impact, which is obviously, but there was no financial piece of this ranking. So this was the
Just the
The
company to
not-
company.
non-financial, it's the non-financial ranking of the company.
Why the second column was not being considered with the age of the company.
I think that's what Bob said. Bob,
That's the
did you
third.
not say that?
This one.
So the third column, the company had a lower rating because of the age of the company.
Is this the one,
We,
they live in town?
we,
No, yeah.
we discounted it.
Column is the second choice.
Well, it's not, again, this is the non-financial evaluation of the company. I think we said that all companies would meet the qualifications. But according to the RFP, we were required to rank the companies, and these were the parameters that were given to rank the companies. And then it also said we're looking into the financial benefit to the town. So this is,
So project impacts as in the ranking, what does that refer to exactly?
Number of trees cut down.
potential impacts on neighbors, it's
Yeah.
potential
I see.
impacts on the town. what they're
Not the
proposing.
financial impact.
No.
No, it was more
Thank you.
projects. So none of this, and maybe that wasn't very clear, but none of this is the financial piece of it. So in our mind, I think we felt we're comfortable with all 3 companies. And a lot of it becomes, what kind of system do you want? and then what the financial benefits
Okay.
are. And so that's why we came up with our recommendation as we did.
And then when you say what the town decides, in the case of the transfer station, which already has the bylaw set for it, the town is the selectmen. In the case of the school,
It's the school.
which requires a bylaw or zoning change, that will go to town meeting, is that?
The school will have, need a, but let me correct you on the DPW site, because under the bylaw, the canopy will need a variance from the
Ah.
zoning board of appeals.
Right, that's right.
And then obviously there'll be a hearing on that to provide the height for the canopy, because the bylaw doesn't provide heights of, I think, about 12 feet. I don't remember correctly.
And these are like 22 or something.
Yeah.
22, we got one off.
One
over
was
30
35,
feet,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
Over 30 feet.
Yeah.
You know, that makes Gary very happy, because you don't have to worry about height anytime he uses his machines over there.
We could store sand and his salt under them.
Right. Exactly.
Why didn't I think that's a...
Well, I mean, I commend you for all your hard work, and we're so anxious to get more revenue coming into town that we'll grab at any straw that can help us get there. But for $27,000 a year or $17,500 a year, these are not dial movers. These are not real big numbers. And when we're talking about cutting down 2 or 3 acres of trees in order to get at some of these numbers, I for one think, as I said last time, I think we need to think long and hard about what that will do to the nature of the town. And Bill, when you grabbed me on the way out and said, "You don't like solar, Carrie?" Well, you know, my son's got it on his house on Curve Street, and we'd have it if we didn't have to cut more trees down on our house. Right. So I think the other thing that's interesting is the company that you really don't like very much, that doesn't want to cut any trees down.
We like them fine.
Oh, you like them fine, okay. Well, because one of their principals lives in town and knows the town, they suggested there may be some alternatives, like the Spalding parking area, which would generate 125,000, kilowatts more of canopy or carport type as an alternative. I mean, I think we need to make sure we're looking at all the alternatives, like the roof of the school, like the Spalding parking area, before we start cutting down trees. That's sort of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, we've already looked at the school before. That's why we have a small system at the school.
Right.
We just don't support the structural unless we do major structural changes to the roofs, on the flat roofs there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and then I understand the tree issue in the town, and that's why my comment in the beginning was it depends on what the town is going to accept for trees. The fact of the matter is that we can still move forward with the DPW site because it's in the bylaw. The town already agreed to do that, other than the canopy issue, which we would go to the zoning board for approval or not approval, and then we could always do the ground-based. But the town already decided that.
Well, we did, although I must say, Bill, that when we talked about that in terms of the solar district, the PV district, I never even envisioned cutting any trees down to do it. I thought there's enough area over at the DPW that doesn't have trees that we could, make some hay there. But so I'm.
Ground mount system, because that's what it was. There isn't that much area over there.
Yeah.
Just to
No.
put a ground mount system. I mean, I understand the canopy, yes, and I can understand the garage, the town barn that, Gary has all his equipment in.
Right.
But that has some issues with the roof and structural. Until that gets
Oh, it
fixed,
does, yeah.
then you can look at that.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, we're losing 4% per year. 4% per block, let me correct myself, 4% per block.
Mhm.
And we think, talking with Bob and who's in the business of this, we think if we move now on the DPW site, we could get probably into block 3, if we're lucky, if things go smoothly and not get delayed. But the school is definitely gonna be in block 4 or 5 because it's gonna take time to do the bylaw, get town approval, go through the whole thing that we're going through right now.
Mhm.
So that's why we recommended moving the DPW site right away, because the town already said yes to that, in my mind anyway. And then we'll work through the issues with the school. I know the school board is definitely, my gut reaction, the school board is in favor of doing something at the school. They want their parking lot fixed and repaired, and there's some benefits to having some shelter when you go to get into the buses and stuff like that. And the snow issue kind of resolved in some areas. So that's kind of where we came from.
I think you mentioned in here that Block 3 would be exhausted by the end of this calendar year.
We don't know for sure.
You don't know for sure, it's
No,
really.
it's unfortunately.
But that sounds pretty aggressive
Yes,
to me, yeah.
yeah.
And just to be clear on one thing, so we did try to break it out into really 4 separate proposals with the option that at each site you could do either or both. And we've made clear to the proposers that they need to bid it that way. They can't say all or nothing. They have to say if they're gonna do so if we decide just to do the carport or just to do the ground mount, that their proposals are good for that type of application. So there's kind of 4 options that can either stand
We're
alone.
not contingent upon being tied in, so.
Exactly.
Okay. Alan, did you have any questions?
No, I mean, I think I understand where everything is. I think we need to move forward with the things that we can get done the way to take advantage of the earlier blocks if at all possible, and then we'll deal with the others as they come up and as we can make decisions on them. But I don't see any reason to hold the whole project while we wait for that.
Nathan? Yo, Nathan, can you hear us?
I can, right now I can.
Did you have anything you wanted?
Feedback?
Yes.
So, I have to say, I haven't had a chance to look through this, but there was a problem in, not getting a copy of the packet. I didn't get it until this morning.
Yeah.
I would like to not have a fixed position on this today. If we do feel strongly about it, I will either abstain or vote against it, just because I don't know, I would probably abstain.
Okay. Were you able to look at the recommendations where the solar working group made recommendation to form a solar contract team?
I guess the only thing about that is, I'm fine with that. I'm not sure how that's really different than the team we have, although I mean, it does look like it's a bit different makeup. I'm uncomfortable in forming a team that would say that there's a particular one that is the first one, just because, I guess first of all, is the school on board with this?
Well,
Has this gone, I understand that there's different phases and everything, but I look at this as an entire package. And I really think that some of the best benefit of this is not going to be at the DPW, it's going to be at the school. Is the school supportive of this? Have they said okay?
well, as far as I know, the school is supportive of it. I don't know whether they've taken a vote or anything.
No, we're not bringing them anything until we hear from you, from the selectmen. So,
Okay.
and we met with them in the spring, and they conceptually were interested, but they didn't commit to anything. They said they wanted to see what the value was.
But in terms of the benefit to the town, I saw some physical reactions on the other side of the table, so maybe somebody wants to respond to Nathan's statement there about whether there's more benefit to the town or to the school.
You mean on both sides? Well, the obvious benefit is that we can move forward with a project at the DPW site and possibly get a better price per kilowatt, and incentives for, our lease in lieu of taxes price. The thing that the DPW site is that and if we start moving forward with this, obviously we have to go to the various committees, we have to go to the CONSCOM. There may be some issues with that. We may, as we said, these are conceptual things, so these are probably the best we're gonna ever get. And it's gonna probably, the size of the clearing and the size of the panel, where they're located, is probably gonna shrink a little bit depending on different issues with the different boards we go to. Conscom is one with wetlands and issues with that. We didn't have any comments from the planning board. You know, Nathan had suggested us go to the planning board. We did. They're all kind of very positive on it last night. And they were very helpful, and they recommended, you know, any help we needed with writing a new bylaw or changing the existing one. So, I mean, it seems to be positive, but I don't see holding up and slowing down this process. I mean, we may get into negotiations and all of a sudden we'll say, this doesn't make sense, and we walk away. But we have to find out, once we start talking with these individuals, these companies, to see if it's really worth us pursuing more. Because you're right, Gary, if it gets down to $0, other than if I put my energy hat on, I'll say, I still would like to see some solar panels, but, you know, for carbon and all that issue. But the town's financial issue, it may not make sense. But we need to move forward to find out, you know. I mean, we haven't signed any contracts with any of these others than their proposals. I'm not sure when they expire, but.
I checked that. The prices are good for 6 months.
So we have 6 months.
February 2nd.
Before these things will change, or, you know, be dropped out, so. You know, we need to start somewhere, you know.
And I think, Nathan, you may be having a hard time hearing. I've been in this situation before, and it's very frustrating where you hear every third word. But from what I understand, it is not a package. It's not all of a package.
Right.
It is, in fact, exactly the opposite. It is piecemeal, this site, that site, the other site.
I think the only requirement is you need to work with one company per site.
Yes, one company per site, but.
But they could be different companies at one site versus the other site.
Yeah.
Because
I guess I understand what you're saying from the perspective of the company we work with is God, and certainly we could break it up into sections. But I think from a concept perspective, from the beginning, we kind of looked at this as a single thing. And so, you know, and when we're looking at the value to the town, for a payback, we're looking at it, you know, as the ultimate, what it is at the end. And so I would just kind of like to know, what is, you know, where are we going to end up in the end, before starting at the beginning. That's what I'd like to know.
I think he's talking about, like, if it's only. Yeah.
And it's not that I don't, you know, obviously, you know, the people I'm picturing is being on the other side of the table are, you know, very, very knowledgeable about this. But I see this as a pretty big, pretty impactful thing on the town when it comes to, you know, what people will see. And I just want to make sure that I really understand what I'm voting on, what I vote on it.
Okay.
So, you know, my vote isn't whether or not, you know, I'm not saying whether or not I think we should do it or not, or whether or not we should take the next step. I would just like to have a couple more to look through it, and you know, talk to some of the people on the committee, before saying, yes, let's go ahead and start the contract negotiations with number one. That's it.
Is there a motion?
Do we have any other input
other
from
input? Yeah.
the public on the solar panel issues?
It doesn't sound like it's much of a benefit cash-wise to the town. Particularly when you look at the numbers that
I'm going to ask you to come to the microphone so that the people on the, at home can hear what you're saying, and please identify yourself.
Edham East Street, it doesn't sound like the total number of dollars amount to that much. Can't imagine what this is going to do to the transfer station if you're putting it there during the construction period. How do you go and operate the transfer station at the same time that that's going on? And as far as the school goes, I was at a last meeting and someone said that Sudbury had it over the parking lot and they hated it. So I don't know why that is the case, but I think that should be carefully looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Sir?
My name is Nick Darbeloff, 289 Russell Street in Carlisle. I should point out that I run commercial for Sunbug Solar that was a bidder on the project. I thought it was a well-done process. I'll start by saying that. I do think there's some fundamental differences between the sites that are worth pointing out. I think that, first off, with regards to the dollars brought in by such a project, under the current incentives in Massachusetts, it is correct. The town does not stand to make a great deal of money off of a lease of a parking lot, of a plot of land, or what have you. Whenever you involve a third-party owner or investor who is then going to pay to lease a parcel, the dollars diminish for all. The investor gets their return. They're the investor. And oftentimes the landowner doesn't receive a whole heck of a lot of financial benefit. But there are fundamental differences between the sites. When you look at a parking canopy over the school parking lot, you've got a substantive benefit in that you've got a certain amount of scale. There's a certain amount of solar that can be built there, and that increases the number of dollars coming to the town, not by a huge amount, but by some. Scale matters. The other thing is, I mean, in our experience, it's actually to the contrary of your comment. I think that we found that certainly visitors to a site, to a school, to a parking area, to a shopping area, what have you, will make a beeline for covered parking because it keeps cars cool in summer and dry in rain and snowless in winter. It's a big benefit. And I think that when you're contemplating carports, that benefit has got to be valued. And if you don't value it, so be it. Then don't do so. But in the absence of that value, a carport may not be worth the dollars you're going to derive from it. With regards to a ground mount, I think there are some other rules of thumb which come into this which are worth stating. One is ground mounts want scale. If you're going to clear trees and you're going to clear cut an area that is forested, you're best off if you do so where you're going to create at least half a megawatt to a megawatt of solar. There's a lot of money that goes into the wetlands delineation. There's a lot of money that goes into the surveying of the parcel. There's a lot of money that goes into the geotech, which is a soil analysis to understand how far down you need to drive your posts and so forth. And if you're only building a small amount of solar, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of economic sense to go forward with it. Now, as a solar vendor, not a big deal. If a customer wants to pay it and they're going to undergo a 9-10 year payback, which is lengthy in the solar business, that's fine. But it also means that the dollars coming to the town for the land lease, especially if it's not at scale, are going to be relatively unimpressive. And one of the things we've found as a solar vendor is that you always want to consider the community and the way a community looks at the clearing of trees. Parking canopies may not be aesthetically pleasing to all. Rooftop solar on a pitched roof where it's visible, flat roofs are usually invisible, often don't please certain people on a church and so forth. And so that's an aesthetic decision. With a ground mount, you are clearing forest, something in Carlisle we don't look super kindly upon. And I think that if you're going to do that, you should do so with eyes open, which means, first off, if you think you're doing this for the dollars, understand what the dollars are, and if they're sufficient, great. If you're going to do this to make a point about solar, that the town is going green, that's great, but you have to consider the fact that you're going to be clearing forest. And a lot of people are going to say, boy, I don't care how green we are, I don't want to see us clearing forests because we're a conservation-oriented town. And so that's something you need to think about. In any case, all told, you've got a number of interesting sites. The transfer station, I think, brings its own challenges because you've got large equipment operating in and around these proposed arrays, which is questionable. The question is whether or not the arrays can be insured successfully. And it's quite possible they can, and that there's going to be no issue there. In any case, there's a lot of pros and cons around all of it. And I think that if you look at the involvement of a third-party investor, what it means is that the dollars you're going to derive in the early going, until there may be a buyout when you own it free and clear, the dollars are going to be relatively unimpressive. After the buyout, the dollars can be quite impressive. But you've just got to weigh all those pros and cons. Anyway, I've probably spoken much longer than I should have.
Very
But I
informative.
thought I'd offer that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with only 3 of us here,
It's,
I think we should decide that we're going to make a decision at our next meeting.
yes.
And that way we'll have everything, we can get all these questions answered, make our due deliberations. But I think it's not fair to the Energy Task Force, it's not fair to all the work that's gone into this, to keep putting this thing off and off and off. Let's make a
Yeah.
decision and either go forward or not.
Yeah, I think we have to.
Could I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Just from, I mean, we're saying it's not much money, but can be a significant amount of money. The PV overlay at the carport at the overlay district is, it's $550,000 over 20 years. $858,000 over 20 years for a ground mount system of 500 kilowatts. As Nick says, that scale does matter. The school, the highest total is, $1.5 million over, $1.6 million over 20 years for, again, per year. Not a lot of money, but there's nothing else in the town that makes money. This is the first proposal that doesn't cost money. It actually makes money. And I do agree, I hate to see trees removed, but if we develop 2 houses or 4 houses, we can remove as many trees as this. And if we're trying to achieve town objectives, there is going to be an offsetting cost. The Benfield, apartments, a lot of trees were taken down for that. It was to fulfill a town goal. So I just need to decide if it's a goal. I mean, there's financial, but it's also, do we want to be part of reducing the carbon footprint in the town and being a part of taking action to offset our municipal carbon usage. So that's.
Yeah, I agree.
We,
You did have another comment.
I guess did you want to make one?
You mentioned $150,000 for 20 years for the transfer station arrays.
Ground mount, yeah.
Ramon, those are canopies over the areas where we drop our trash, or we talking?
No,
something
ground
else?
mount.
Ground
There's,
mount is 858,000.
And how many megawatts of solar, how many kilowatts of solar?
It's 505 kilowatts.
5 megawatts.
No, 500 kilowatts.
500 kilowatts.
Yeah, and then 460 kilowatts over the transfer station.
500 kilowatts is producing $550,000 over 20 years.
No, $850,000 over 20 years.
There's potentially something wrong with the math here. $850,000 over 20 years for 500 kilowatts implies $42,000 per year for a 500 kilowatt system. 500 kilowatt system, which would imply $80,000 per megawatt per year, which is unheard of in the solar industry.
That's what the numbers are.
Okay.
And it was not only.
I would simply say, wherever those numbers came from, make very, very sure that there's a very clear understanding that it's forthcoming from
Oh, yeah.
whoever did it.
In that regard, are there any guarantees in terms of revenues that any of these companies will sign up for?
Well, it's a lease, so
a
the
lease,
good news
yeah.
is that you don't, if the system doesn't perform as they hoped, it's a lease, you get a fixed payment. Yeah, and it's also a tax payment, a pilot, so you get a fixed payment.
Right.
So what we tried to do in the original document and the questions is tried to eliminate where companies were saying, here's a number, but it might be adjusted. We asked them to say, you know, what would your site costs be that might adjust it? What are your interconnection costs that might adjust it? What would your adjustment be if, based on a block? And so we asked for that information so that at least those would be known, and it would be fair to the developer. If the project got delayed because of the town, that the developer didn't have to back out of the job, they could say, this is what it would be, this would be the price, so.
Thanks.
All right,
You.
we will put you on our next agenda. I want to say I saw a solar farm in the Atacama Desert in Chile that just, you would blow your mind. I probably do somewhere. I'll see if I can locate it. It wasn't acres. It was, you know, square miles. And it was totally flat and not a tree in sight. And not a rain cloud anywhere.
By the way, if anybody hasn't seen a canopy, a typical canopy, there's one at Walden Pond at the visitor center.
Right,
That's right, too.
yeah.
Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
but the other one,
Thank you.
the one that would be at the DPW site would probably look like the one that's at, on the way, in Billerica on the way to Route 3, right?
Yeah.
Not a pretty sight. Yes, so they were shielding theirs too, obviously. Okay, I gotta relocate my agenda.
Town administrators.
Ooh, town
Well,
administrator.
but I wanna look at it in case there's something else we should do first. All right, hang on, got all this, okay, here, found it. Okay, let's do the administrator's report, because this other one is not gonna be fun either. Nathan, you chose a really great week to go on vacation, that's all I have to say.
Vacation?
Or whatever it is. Yeah,
Okay, the first item in my town administrator's report, attached to my report, you will see revised orders of taking for lots 1 and 2 at 767 Bedford Road, also known as the Woodward property, at least it was before we acquired it. Town council's been working on this with Wayne Davis, who's representing CCF. The revised orders of taking, I'm told, reflect the town meeting votes that were taken last fall. The orders of taking we had done, the board had executed previously, didn't reflect the language of the town meeting vote. So you'll see the two agreements that follow, the corrected orders of taking that the board should vote to execute this evening. Jen has the originals. Hopefully this will be the final time we have to do an order of taking for those parcels.
okay.
I think we've got
Can I
the
have a
motion.
motion to accept these revised orders of taking for lots 1 and 2 at 767 Bedford Road?
I move that the board accept the revised orders of taking as submitted in the town administrator's report, which reflect the proper wording from the town meeting.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We need to do roll call.
Oh, that's right, sorry.
Kissinger, aye.
Aye. Lewis?
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Okay.
Very good, thank you. The second item in my report, you'll see in the packet, there's a letter from the Department of Telecommunications and Cable reminding us that our cable agreement with Comcast will expire in October 2021, and they generally give you kind of a 3-year notice. It's kind of like the 2-minute warning, a 3-year notice that your license will be expiring, and they ask that you revive your cable committee if it's not active, and enter into a license renewal process with the provider at that time. Now, in the past, we have hired outside counsel for this, and they've done a fine job. I'm advised by town council that this is something that they could handle for us under our retainer agreement. So I think, if the board, agrees, I think we could ask town council to take this on for us rather than
Until we find out they
hire a
can't.
special
I
counsel.
don't see-
Right,
yeah.
unless there's something that they can't, so with your concurrence, I'll contact town council and tell them they've got 3 years to
Yeah.
hammer out
And
a agreement.
is our cable advisory committee moribund, or are they still
It
kind of?
is, yeah.
So,
At the time, Selectman Bill Tice was on it, and there were a few other individuals that I haven't
Bill
seen in a
Tice.
few
Oh my
years,
gosh.
so.
Yeah, okay.
We can,
There are a lot of local residents about Comcast and availability of Comcast and everything, and so, hopefully we can get some of those people interested in serving on this negotiation.
Yeah, maybe the mosquito will put a little blurb
Okay,
in
we
about
can-
how we're looking for people interested in
press release.
this,
Yeah. we
getting
can
an out of agreement.
Press release for the Cable Advisory Committee. Okay.
Yes.
Will do. All right, moving on, just an update. I've been in touch with the town manager in Concord, and he's been in touch with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, and I've been in touch with the school superintendent, or the superintendent at the high school, and everyone agrees that it makes a lot of sense for us to, revive the joint meetings that we had in the past. And so I've offered to host the first such meeting in November. I think we'll wait until the dust settles after the election and the early voting and everything. But we'll look to have a meeting within the next month here.
Is it gonna be a morning meeting or an evening
It'll
meeting?
be a morning meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I won't bring the wine then.
Okay.
I'll bring the donuts.
Right. I think.
Don't
it-
bring the
morning-
wine, that's all right.
Yeah, there's someone in Concord that at 5 PM is the only time they can meet, and that just didn't sound like a good time. Traditionally, they were held in the mornings
Yeah,
down at the Concord Townhouse, but we thought we would kind of alternate locations.
Good idea.
So we'll
Good.
keep you
Make-
informed of that. And then also, item number 4, the OPEB Trust Investment Policy Statement. I think I circulated that to you a few weeks ago and told you we'd be bringing it forward. This is something that we're required to have. It's kind of a policy document that informs our financial advisors as to what things our OPEB funds should be invested in, what's the acceptable level of risk to the town. The Finance Committee approved this at a previous meeting. I'm told that policy reflects a moderate amount of risk for those of you that understand investment of trust funds, and that it can be revisited over time and will be. There will be another document that the board will be asked to review and approve at a future date, and that'll be the actual kind of nuts and bolts of how our OPEB trust will be administered. So this is
Yeah.
more an overall guidance document as to how the funds can be and should be invested. And Finance Director would appreciate it if you could approve that tonight, or if you have additional questions, we can, certainly get answers to those it required Finance Committee and Selectmen approval, and the FinCom is satisfied with the policy as it reads.
I would move that the board approve the investment policy statement submitted by the Finance Committee.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, we have to do roll call, so.
Kissinger, aye?
Read
Lewis,
it.
aye.
Read aye.
Brown eye?
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
that was unanimous.
Do we have a investment firm who does this for us, or is that?
There is a, I'm blanking on their name now, but Bartholomew is the
All
name of the firm. That They do a number of communities, and we're one of them. And then finally, for your information, the upcoming meeting schedule and some of the agenda items. And I'll add the Energy Task Force to the November 13th meeting, if that seems to be the consensus.
And Tuesday, December 10th is not a, December 10th is a Monday.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe perhaps it's the 11th then.
Well, in the previous one, it said Monday we were gonna meet, but
Yeah.
Tuesday, November 27th.
it's either the Monday or the 10th, it
It's
can't be both.
definitely a Tuesday.
December
It's definitely a
7th.
Tuesday, okay.
Definitely the second Tuesday
Friday,
of the
December.
month, whatever.
And it's the 11th, I think.
Okay.
Monday, December, yeah, so it's Tuesday, December 11th, and I already have it in my calendar, because
Okay.
mine goes automatically second and fourth weeks, so.
Okay. Tuesday, December 11th.
November
Actually, a meeting
27th.
with the Finance Committee. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I had a question, though, about the November 27th meeting,
Oh,
and that, where you put that you thought we'd revisit the Rutland East Street stop sign? And I was kind of surprised to see that on there, because I thought we were going to revisit it in a year, maybe, but
I thought it was a 6-month.
is it a 6-month? Okay,
Maybe I got that
maybe.
wrong.
It was just a 6-month thing,
Oh, it was.
not really a revisit, but just hopefully just hear from,
The chief.
Yeah, okay.
how, how it was going, and it would give us time to see if there
Has
were
it-
also some like nothing.
Time flies then, because it didn't seem like, like 6.
It was a 6 months, and hopefully, Chief Fish doesn't have to come in, maybe if he could just send a report on how that has been going.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's just, I couldn't believe that, can hardly believe it's been 6 months even, okay.
Right.
All right,
Well, just one other note, it's not in my report, but the deadline has passed for applications for fire chief, and the town received 30 applications. They'll be meeting with consultants, MRI, shortly to start winnowing the list down to a number of individuals will be interviewed, and then a smaller number will then go through the assessment center following the interview, so. The consultant thought that 30 was a pretty good,
And apparently, some
Very
very
good number.
highly qualified people, which
right,
Sounds good,
based on
yeah.
the summary. Yep.
all right,
Thank you.
great. All right, Boston, BOS discussion about Carlisle Affordable Housing Trust and Carlisle Housing Authority.
I'll just-
This is my agenda item.
Yes,
Would you like me to take it?
yes, please do.
Okay. So this, the reason why I wanted to put on, this agenda wasn't to have a meaty discussion about it, but just to make sure that we, continue to, keep it front and center as something that we need to address. It's my thought that in our next meeting, we should probably, identify a longer period of time. I don't think we have very much time in this meeting for it. But I didn't want a meeting because I really didn't bring it up, and people didn't think that, this was something that we needed, that we didn't feel that it needed to be done, and we were worried about it.
Okay.
I think I've kind of given some highlights, in previous meetings about, kind of how we need to go about it, obviously, one of the things we need to do is we need to find, interested candidates. I'm not sure if we've gotten any additional writings, Tim, of anybody interested in being on the committee.
I think we, 2 write-ins, Jen, people have sent, yeah, so far.
I've asked a couple of people if they were interested.
Yeah, and so that, that's one thing, and we absolutely need to do that. I also thought his background, it would actually be really good for us to kind of take another look at kind of what is the trust responsible for, what is the housing authority responsible for, to make sure that when you're actually, when there's clear understanding of who's responsible for what. And I think that that's one of the things that's kind of been a contention in the past. And towards that end, I did have council, I got something on, this is what one is responsible for, and this is what the other one is responsible for. So what I'd like to do is, if they agree, is have this on the next agenda item, something that we can jump into. Hopefully Tom will have that for us. We'll be able to hopefully look at people who are interested in being appointed to it, and map a roadmap forward. Kerry, can you remind me when our next affordable housing trust meeting is?
The 30th of October, 7 o'clock?
I thought it was 7:30.
7:30, oh, for you, 7:30, yes.
Please,
Week from tonight.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And so the affordable housing trust will have a chance to talk about this as well.
Right.
Before the next meeting.
Right.
I've had a couple of folks approach me also with interest, and one of them is a resident at Benfield, so
Oh,
I think that's
she's
interesting.
interested in the trust, not in the authority.
Well, just in being involved with housing. One thing as we talk about these responsibilities between the two groups, I'm reminded that the housing authority can only be involved in affordable housing issues. They can't provide funding or anything for anything but affordable housing support. So we still have this desire in town, certainly, for more diversity of housing, period. And that could easily fall through the cracks if both the authority and the trust are only focused on affordable housing. So we can hopefully look to the master planning process to address that issue of housing diversity, but it's not going to be addressed by the housing authority or the housing trust.
Okay.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I have the agenda information, and how does the deer issue get on the agenda for next time, because apparently it's not this time, it wasn't last time. So we keep on creating the agenda list, which is fine. And we keep on asking, well, how do we get on the agenda? And I don't see it happening even with the next discussion that we're talking about the next meeting. So do we write an application or a
Okay.
certified letter? Or
So I'm sorry, the chairman could not hear you, so if you would like to approach a little closer.
Sure.
The chairman is the one that sets the agenda, so he's probably the one that needs to hear this, and if you want to sit here where he can hear you better.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, George Vandera here from Maple Street. We've been trying to get on the agenda to talk about the hunting and the deer situation for several months now. And we're creating another agenda, which is the next meeting, I guess. I mean, I'm not really versed in exactly how the system works, but we've been asking the system to include us on the agenda. And people stood up today and said, this has been going on since September 25th. Without us getting on the agenda, which we expected tonight, and we expected the last time, and perhaps we expected September 25th. So now we're creating a new agenda for the next meeting, which is fine. What is the due process to guarantee that we are finally going to be heard officially on the agenda without us going another month without us on the agenda? If there's a procedure to be followed, whether it's legal, moral, letters, anything that is required, we will comply if you tell us how to comply to guarantee us that we'll be on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, so let's, we didn't have anything to do with the Affordable Housing Trust or having a housing authority, but I will respond to it. I am responsible for the fact that this was not on the agenda. I was not at the last meeting, and I took it off because I didn't feel like we had the information that we would need to have a discussion about it at that point in time. We have a deer committee, and the process is managed by the CONSCOM, or the hunting process is managed by CONSCOM. I would like to know more from the deer committee and from CONSCOM how things are going. I understand that there are, concerns from the citizens, and we've been getting letters from that. But what was requested to be on the agenda was kind of a change in the makeup of the committee and a reevaluation. I decided as the chair that I didn't want it to be on this particular meeting, because I wanted us to be able to hear from the committee everything that they have been doing.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate the answer. But the situation is boiling over into a democracy question because of the editorial that was in the Mosquito. So now it's 5,000 people looking over our shoulders, both the BOS as well as the citizens. And it's no longer the color orange for the jacket or the word danger on the signs. It's now boiled up to an issue of town meetings, and it's a very, very simple solution. When you have a problem that a lower entity can't solve, then you simply defer to the contract being the warrant or the law, and nobody is hurt by this by basically going to a higher authority. The higher authority here are the citizens of Carlisle. And what we're doing is we're still looking at it as the Deer Committee and the Conservation Committee, and we're dealing in noise here while the thing is boiling over to a macroscopic confrontation, which is not necessary.
Okay, I think.
I'm not sure I'm following, and I know that there's a lot that was said at the very beginning, and unfortunately, nobody that was at the podium I could hear. But I'm not sure how this is boiling over into a democracy issue.
Well, there was an editorial inside in the Mosquito that basically said that the BOS is exceeding its authority with some of the interpretation of a vote that happened all the way back in 2015, which declared that the BOS will be able to discuss these points, not decide on these points. We're now come to the point of deciding on the points without the discussion. So the Mosquito basically very forcefully said that this is something that should be at a town meeting. It's beyond the capability of us in this room going on meeting after meeting talking about the color of jackets.
Okay, then what if that's the case, then what is the urgency of us having it on the meeting tonight?
The meeting tonight was supposed to, could have affected if this communication had gone through earlier than this, as we tried to with respect to the editorial. It would be basically to suspend the deer hunt as any appeal process would. When you have an appeal with the IRS, it stops the process at that point until the correct path might be determined, instead of going on with the process. Appeal means you officially have something on record that warrants the stopping of more decision-making until the higher authority decides. So the BOS could, in fact, suspend the deer hunt until these big issues are addressed. That would be a correct path. That wouldn't embarrass the BOS or anybody in this town. Just like, again, when you call and you need help from customer service, they say hold the phone and they go to a higher authority. The higher authority are the Carlisle people, the democracy, that would decide this at the town meeting, and no black eye would be on the BOS if they said, this is an issue that we have to study, and until then, we stop all process until the due process is followed.
Okay, so I guess it comes down to, whether or not, I guess I don't feel like due process is not required here.
Well, that's what the Mosquito article said. I mean, that's the issue.
That's just an article, right? I mean,
No, it's not. It's an editorial.
Yeah, it was an editorial, and so I don't know that means that we broke due process. The Board of Selectmen do have the right, the legal right to allow hunting on town-owned land, so sure that we follow the law in doing this, and that we didn't have the authority to do this.
I'm not sure either, but the point is, it's in controversy, and controversy means let's discuss it, at least get it on the agenda. I mean, I'm not saying we're right or you're right, there is no right and wrong here. The authority are the people, and so let's defer to the higher authority. Both sides of the fence are not at an impasse. It is a very, very, very large issue that has been raised to the whole town, way above this meeting. It's now editorial level. 5,000 people are saying, well, what are we going to do? The simple thing to do is suspend all operations and defer to higher authority. And nobody gets embarrassed by that.
I'm going to interrupt this now and take control back of the meeting.
Thank you.
I think you've had your chance to discuss this now with the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much.
And, okay, thank you. Housing Authority will be on the next agenda. Okay. Liaison reports.
Nothing from me?
Carrie, you got anything?
I hate to do this, but I need to drop out.
I don't blame you.
Excuse me, what did you say would be on the next agenda?
Just a minute, please.
And it was really, really great. It's just remarkable how terrific it is that all the towns, that all the towns came together and really worked together to make that reactor that February and Concord Rivers, the wireless thing in place in the UK.
Great.
I'm very proud that Carlisle is involved in that.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Nathan. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
The only liaison I have is for the Master Planning Steering Committee.
Yes.
They have been soliciting volunteers for the advisory committee, which they hope to be a group of 20 or 25 folks from town that have subject area knowledge of housing or recreation or the center or whatever. Combination of people that are in private business and regular folks. We've gotten, I think, about 10 or so folks that have stepped forward. And it's a really good cross-section of people from town. We'd like to have 10 or 15 more. So anyone out there that has read the blurb in the Mosquito about come forward and volunteer to be on the Master Planning Advisory Committee, which will really be the group that shapes what the master plan becomes. And this process is going to begin in earnest after the town meeting when we vote to appropriate enough money to get a consultant involved, which we'll need to do this process over the following year. And that's when the Master Planning Advisory Committee will be most active during 2019. So again, anyone interested in serving, we'd really like to hear from you.
Nothing from you. That's it for you?
Thank you.
Okay. I went to the Hanscom Air Force Base meeting that I signed on for. I'm not sure I'll go to too many more of those. First of all, they're very often on the same nights as our meetings, so this was the first one in months that I was able to go to. I did learn some things, and I forgot to bring the notes, but for later, I will publish later. There is a website for the Massport / Hanscom, so if a plane comes that's too noisy over your house, apparently you can go on this site and find out what's scheduled to come in and when, and there's the phone number that you can call to complain about the noise. Mostly it was a report about how they're reducing noise every month and how it's getting better. And
Number of landings has gone up tremendously.
Well, the FedEx goes right over my house at 5 in the morning. Well, since my house is right next to your house, it goes over your house as well. But I think what the major problem at the airport for noise was they had apparently a little flight school and those little prop engines, and they would do these touch and goes and over and over and over again, and that was driving the neighbors nuts. So that's what I learned there. But the more important meeting I was at was, of course, the facilities. And as I was sort of alluded to, I wanted to keep the selectmen abreast of what we're doing, because in the warrant gave a certain amount of money for a whole list of possible projects or some other projects. And it's looking like it's going to be or rather than the ones that we submitted for all kinds of reasons. And the major one is because we're losing our chief 6 months earlier than we thought we were going to. So we decided to put the fire station on the back burner and bring the DPW forward. The other thing and we've also learned some other things. For instance, if you do any changes or any repairs and things like that, you start triggering things, inspections, and at its current square footage, the DPW barn would have to be sprinklered if we leave their little rest station. They built a little second level in part of it so that they could, have showers and this cot there. And if we leave that in there, that would be too many square feet, and it would trigger having to sprinkler the whole thing. And cheaper than sprinklering would be to put, and they wanted fixes on this thing, on their rest area. So we're talking now about putting a trailer at the DPW so that would be handicapped accessible, would have public restrooms, it would have a shower for the employees. But the other thing that we learned is, regardless of whether we did the trailer or just fixed up the DPW, that triggers Title V on the current septic, which was put in '79. So we have ordered that. We're doing a voluntary Title V inspection, and we've been talking about possibly putting a holding tank and pumping, rather than doing it anyway. So stay tuned. We're trying to save as much money as we can by not triggering things and by doing things as economically as possible, but it's like pulling a thread. So.
I do have a couple others. One is the Oversight Committee for the Regional School System. As you know, that they have retained a firm to take a look at what is possible on the side of the high school. Can they do an oval track field, and can they do must they do about concessions and toilets, and can they put another building somewhere on the site, and how does that affect parking? All of those moving parts. So they're at a much lower price than they originally thought it might cost. They're working on this, and they're going to have a report in December, initial report in December, as to what is possible at the high school. So that's going to move along pretty rapidly.
Hopefully we'll hear about that at our, joint.
Right. And on CCTV, as you know, CCTV no longer exists as of 1st of this month. The town of Concord is providing those services to us. We haven't, the ink is drying on the contract between us and Concord as to how those services will be provided. We're requesting that they be provided on an as-used basis. So we only pay for what we use, time and materials, and we have a quote from them for an hourly rate of about $50 an hour, which is very reasonable, much, much more reasonable than we've been spending.
We have some sort of an estimate of how much time we've been spending up till now?
We gave them initial estimate for planning purposes of 20 hours a week. Now that includes preparation, travel, production, post-production for whatever we're doing. So, that's still a whole lot less than we've been paying. And we think that the terms should be fine with them. They created the framework for the agreement, and we just sort of filled in a couple of blanks. So, forgot about that, sorry.
Okay. Approval of minutes. I have a confession to make. I didn't read them.
I did, and I didn't have any corrections this time.
I did, and I had no corrections either.
Okay, good. I'm usually the...
With all the Deer Committee, I can't remember if I attended a Deer Committee meeting actually since our last meeting, but I do know that as of week before this weekend, all the vetted signs vetted by legal, by counsel, have been posted. And there was an inconsistency in that the signs that the Deer Committee put up basically said hunting in progress, and the original signs from Conscom said no hunting on property, on town property. So they've whited out the no hunting verbiage on those signs, so that the wording is consistent.
So there was a response to that.
Yeah, there has been a response. Also, it seems like the news cycle with the mosquito sort of is about a week after things are already done. So
But the
then that's
mosquito-
just the way it goes with a weekly
Mosquito
newspaper.
raised another issue, as this gentleman
Yes.
Yeah.
articulated, and we really need to.
Well, we actually did discuss it at a certain point, and it was our interpretation of the warrant article that we did not need to go back to town meeting,
That was
so.
before I
that-
joined the board, but.
Yeah.
okay,
May
yeah.
I ask a question?
Brief one, please.
Yes. Can you please tell me where I can have the information from that discussion meeting, if you know where it is?
Oh, boy, I don't remember what, it was last year, somewhere along the line.
And the other thing is that the Greeno on Maple Street still has the contradictory signage.
Ah,
Okay,
thanks.
so-
Thank you.
Okay. Great.
I just want to know why if you request to be heard, why you can't be scheduled as part of the meeting. Because you put the request in, and I've shown up a couple times now to try to say something, but there was, because I thought you'd be on the agenda, I thought it was put forward, so I assumed it would be here, and then
Well-
else wasn't on. And it was taken off. It just seems like if.
There were several things that happened. First of all, the chairman wasn't here. I did say that it would be going on the next meeting. I think the administrative team put it on the next. And the chair, I did not know that the chair was not going to be available tonight, nor did I know that Mr. Askalulu would not be available. And the chair pulled the agenda item off. One of the, probably, I can't speak for him, but you just spoke to him. I imagine he did know that Mr. Askalilo wasn't going to be here because he told me tonight, I guess, he wasn't going to be. When we're talking about something that's important, we'd like to have the full body here. Three of us cannot take these big policy questions and decide them. So I think that may have entered into it. I apologize.
I should
Don't
have
know.
been told though, because Jen informed me that I would be on this agenda, that October 5th.
Thought that
which
there
the
was,
board meeting.
I thought that was taken care of on Friday.
No, I was told by Jen on October 5th that I would be on the agenda, because I couldn't make the October 9th agenda because of the Columbus Day holiday.
Yes, and that I explained to you as well when you came on.
And then I would definitely be on, she said I would be on the October 23rd. There's an email that says it to that effect, and it's not Jen's fault, she's the secretary. And so I've been coming to these meetings assuming, now, I'm not sure, I have to listen to the record of what Nathan said, Selectman Nathan said. But it sounds like that I was never informed that it was pulled, that there was a decision made that despite, it seems to me that no matter what I decided, I wasn't going to be informed that there was a decision by the chair of the Selectmen and the remainder of the Selectmen that somehow that they could override, which is what they did, the May 2015 vote that said that this was supposed to go to town meeting. Now,
I'm sorry, that was the other discussion that we had a year ago, and that was not the conclusion that this board came to at that time. So
that's why I need to find out where those, if you, Jen, if you can let me know so I can research this.
There was an opinion from town council at the time as well that
And there was an
it did
opinion.
not require a town meeting.
There was an opinion from town council that it did not require a second town meeting.
Controversy is coming up again because the editorial raised it, so it's time to revisit that.
Okay, we may revisit it.
But then we have to get on the agenda to revisit it, so there's catch-22 going on here.
Well, I can also say, by the way, it's too late for this agenda because it wasn't on the, whether it was ever or not. I might also say, if you have letters and things to give us, giving them to us at the meeting is not effective. We need to have these by Thursday before the thing. Okay. Because-
So, I think the question is now, if the citizens vote for something and the Board of Selectmen say, well, we have the power to do what we want, does the Board of Selectmen say we can outvote the citizens? There's too many questions of
I
democracy
believe,
in what's
you know,
going
I'm
on.
not the chair. The chair sets the agenda. I will talk to him when he gets back into town. I will urge him to put him on the agenda. I cannot do anything else for you at this point.
One more point, though, Kate. You said just now, you know, you have to have it in by Thursday for the next meeting. We did that, and that still was being ignored. So you're saying we didn't follow the process. We have followed the process.
No, I didn't say you didn't follow the process. You gave us, Jenny gave us some letters
I
tonight.
gave you additional information
Okay.
based on the response that I got from the last
Okay,
response.
okay. It's just that it's difficult for us to deal with that sort of late information. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
We haven't approved the minutes yet.
Sorry, the minutes. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I move that the minutes of the meeting of,
I'll tell you in a second. Tuesday, October 9th.
the October 9th be approved as submitted.
I second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Well, you don't, we don't have the phone on anymore, so we can just
Oh.
say aye.
Okay, aye.
Aye, 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 that's what I say. And at this point, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session. And it's in the,
I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Paragraph 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position, that afterwards the board will not return to open session.
is there a second?
Second.
And that, we have to do roll call?
Louis, aye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye. Thank you very much.